Good
Good
evening, everyone,
evening.
and thank you for joining our Live Well, Heal Well, Rest Well series. I am Crystal Bullard, one of your facilitators tonight. So, as many of you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and in the month of May, every Thursday, we dedicate time to bringing awareness, empowering, and educating the community, local and at large, doing our part to join in the conversation to break stigma around mental health. And so tonight I'm going to start with a quote that I want to read to you, and it's by Thomas Decker. And it says, "Sleep is the golden chain that ties health and our bodies together." Tonight, joining me to talk about the connection between sleep and our mental health is one of my favorite people, my colleague turned friend turned family, so family, Chrissy Schmitzer. Hello,
Hi.
how's it going?
Good. That was
Good,
a warm welcome. Thank you.
good. So I want to share a little bit about your background with everyone, just so they know the wealth of knowledge that's in our presence tonight. So Chrissy's background is in social work, her bachelor's and master's degrees in social work. She has been a social worker since 2000 and a licensed therapist since 2012. Chrissy has worked in a variety of settings to include different DSS agencies. She's worked every unit within the agency. She's been a supervisor within the agency on different capacities. She's been a community provider where she provided outpatient therapy, intensive in-home. She was a part of the ACT team. She's even been a director of social work at a nursing home. So she has a lot of experience, very seasoned, and she's a certified clinical supervisor. So it's clear who we have with us on tonight. So, Chrissy, when it comes to mental health, we know that in simple terms, it basically means the condition of our mind. And so often people use the term excluding themselves and only considering mental health to be about those who have mental health disorders. But the reality is that mental health includes all of us because we all have thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We all have a brain, and that's basically what encompasses mental health. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the continuum for our viewers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we if more of us would compare our mental health to our physical health, then I think we have a better understanding. You know, you it would be unusual to hear someone say physical health doesn't pertain to me because we all have a body. We all have things that we're dealing with as far as our physical health. Well, that's exactly the same thing with our mental health. And in order for us to function as well rounded human beings, then both our physical and our mental health go hand in hand. And if our mental health is not doing well, then it can impact our physical health and vice versa.
Absolutely. And so, there are different levels to that continuum, and we all fluctuate on that continuum depending on, our coping skills and life stressors and, our support system, even. But a big indicator of when something is maybe unaligned um, is when we experience certain symptoms. That's what we call it in the mental health world. And these are the indicators that we typically use to be able to determine whether or not a person is experiencing a problem, which at some point or another we all have. And that's not a diagnosis, it's a problem. At some point, we have all had issues with sleep. We have all had issues with anxiety or even depression, depending on a loss or depending on what has gone on in our lives. And so, sleep disturbance, we're talking about sleep tonight, is often a symptom or an indicator for us that an individual might have something going on. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean a diagnosis. It could just be a problem, but there's definitely something that's occurring in their life that's creating this sleep change. And so, what I also want to point out though is that prolonged sleep disturbance that can significantly impact one's mental health, overall health, all of it. Um, and we know that our mental health, as you mentioned before, and physical health, they can influence one another. So I want you to just share a little bit about sleep hygiene. It's not something that's often talked about. I didn't hear about it until I was actually in the field working at a residential facility. It was the first time ever, and it was pretty foreign. And so just give us a working definition and help us to become a little bit more familiar with what sleep hygiene is and how it can serve us.
Yeah, so simply put, sleep hygiene is what we consider our good sleep habits. Um, and it really includes a realm of what is what we're doing to help our sleep habits, and maybe things that we're doing that do not help our sleep habits. And there's actually been a whole lot of research put into what can increase positive sleep habits versus what kind of doesn't promote positive sleep habits, the negative sleep habits per se. And the goal would be to have positive sleep habits and get good rest so our bodies are rested. And that takes us back to the continuum of impacting our physical health as well as our mental health.
Yeah. So, can you share with everyone that's watching, like, some sleep tips or some do's and don'ts? You mentioned, we want to have positive sleep habits. We want to do positive things and things to enhance our sleep, um, versus, things that are not helpful. But, like, give us some starting points and tips of what we can do to get on the good foot.
Right. So there's a lot that kind of goes into play regarding some do's and don'ts. So what I wanted to focus on today is maybe talking about some of the things that we hear a little bit less of. So for one, let's talk about your sleep space, which is really important. You want to make sure that your sleep space is set up for sleep. It's actually been stated that for a good sleep space, to be in your bed, and that you don't do anything in your bed except for sleep and sex. You don't eat in your bed. You don't watch TV in your bed. You don't lay on your phone and scroll through social media in your bed, but you set that space up so your body knows, look, I'm going to bed. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to sleep. Um, Setting the temperature to your room in a healthy temperature for you, depending on what stage of life you're in, that may be very different. I'm going to need my room a little bit cooler for me to get comfortable, but making sure that the temperature is at a good setting, that if you need noise in your room, that you have a sound machine or a fan going that you can actually hear that white noise. So you're setting the mood for wanting to sleep, and that's telling your body, okay, it's time to unwind and get some rest. Being aware of what light might shine into your room is also important. If you live somewhere where a street light shines into your room, that could create issues and you may not be able to go to sleep. So, having blackout curtains or positioning your bed to where that light's not directly impacting your ability to sleep. So, those would be some important tips to really take away for that space. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about also is about what we take in, what we consume as far as food and as far as other things that we put into our body. So I think everyone is probably aware of what happens after Thanksgiving when we eat a big meal and everyone sits around, talk about how tired they are, and you might even take a nap. So that is a real thing. There are things in your there's an ingredient in your turkey that makes you tired.
Tryptophan.
And tryptophan, thank you. I knew I wasn't going to be able to say the word. It looks different than it's spelled, but tryptophan. And what research actually tells us is tryptophan turns it converts into serotonin in our brains, and that serotonin later transverses itself into melatonin, and melatonin actually creates sleepiness. A lot of people take melatonin to help them sleep at night, and then it's also naturally in our brains. So if we're feeding our brains things that can make us tired, then that can create issues with sleep. But what happens if we eat things like that too close to bedtime, then it can interrupt your sleep cycle. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as far as sleep cycle and kind of journaling what you've been eating and things like that to help you identify what your issues are. But also, if you're eating a large meal at the end of the day, right before you go to bed, that can sometimes cause disruptions in your sleep. It's hard for your body to relax itself if it's trying to digest because your body is working. So you want to make sure you eat within a certain amount of time before you try to settle down. And it's hard to give recommendations on what that is because it's different for everyone's body on how they digest. So again, that's where it's really good to keep track of maybe what didn't go well. You didn't sleep, so what did you do before you laid down that night to try to say what is bothering me. Another thing that we don't always think about is consuming substances. When I'm talking about substances, I'm talking about alcohol, caffeine, nicotine. I actually, in preparation for today, I learned some things about nicotine that I hadn't really connected before, which was really interesting to me. So we all know that nicotine is actually a stimulant. Nicotine gets us going. It revs us up. So if you're smoking and you're smoking before bedtime, you're fueling yourself and you're telling yourself, let's get up, let's do stuff, let's be active. So you may have a little harder time to sleep. But the part that I found so interesting is, let's say you're trying to quit smoking and you're in a period of not smoking. It takes about 10 full days for your sleep to catch up with the nicotine to get out of your system in order for you to kind of settle yourself down and be able to sleep. So that would actually be considered a withdrawal symptom of nicotine use, that it's interrupting your sleep. And I don't know the research behind that, but I would, just based on what I know, if people are having a hard time sleeping and the nicotine is still in their system, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to get back up and start smoking again because that's what they're used to doing. And that has helped them before. So they get into kind of a pattern of being dependent on the nicotine to sleep, even though technically the nicotine's not helping them sleep, but it was harder to sleep without it, which I know is kind of complicated. But that to me is very fascinating. So yeah, so those things. I didn't touch on the caffeine. I got so excited about nicotine. But caffeine, I think most of us are aware of. Obviously, you don't want to drink caffeine before you go to bed for the majority of us. And again, this impacts everyone differently. I could get me a big old energy drink right now and I could go to bed with no problems. I am very special. That is not the norm. But so, and the other thing with caffeine is if you're drinking it right before bed, even if you don't feel like it's impacting you to fall asleep, it can interrupt your sleep habits. So you may go to sleep easily, but you may find yourself waking up at certain hours of the day or of the night. And the other thing with caffeine is a lot of times the energy drinks and the sodas and things like that, we're like, okay, this is giving me a burst of energy because I didn't sleep good last night. So I need this caffeine. I need this coffee to get me going. And so you start your day off with that. But what's going to happen 3 or 4 hours afterwards is you're going to crash. So you tell yourself, I need more caffeine to keep me going throughout the day. And then what's happened is you've had multiple drinks or substances of caffeine, which is going to impact you at bedtime. So we're going through a cycle of not being able to sleep well because of the habits that we have consumed ourselves with, but you can't get out of that habit because it is a cycle and it's really hard because, well, you got to function during the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so those would be, I think, the top three. There's a lot of different tips and tricks, like I said before, but I think those are the big top three that I think are, in my opinion, some of the most important.
Okay. So what if I say, well, Chrissy, I've tried all of those things already. Right? I don't drink before bed. I do have the mood set in my room and I only sleep in there. And I'm not eating heavy before I go to bed. I've everything you said I've done. And I'm still having problems with my sleep. So like when you've done all you can do, what do you
Right.
do next? What is your recommendation?
So I am going to preface this with I am not a medical professional. So on some of these things, I do think you need to consult with your medical professional, your physician. But there are over the counter things that you can try. You can try chamomile tea, or another type of sleepy time tea is another one, and see if that helps you to settle down and to rest at night and get your body kind of in that place of being able to go to sleep. There is the melatonin that is over the counter and is a natural sleep aid that a lot of people find useful. And also starting a sleep journal just to document kind of what's going on. So you have all that there and you can kind of look at patterns of what you're seeing is different and it helps you to kind of change things up.
Okay. Okay. I'm sure we've probably all heard about the over-the-counter natural things. The thing that maybe we haven't heard much about is the journal piece. So,
Mhm.
okay, you've mentioned, starting a journal, keeping a journal. This could be helpful to help you recognize patterns or, things like that. Give me some other things. Like, what else I need to write in my journal? And how's that going to help my
So, right. So I think I think you need to put things in there like what time you set to go to bed. What time did you go to bed, go into your room and said, okay, this is night time? Like, what time was that? Put
Okay.
in there, what time did you actually fall asleep? How long did it take you to fall asleep? What what happened if you're having awakeness, like if you say you can fall asleep just fine, because that's some people can fall asleep with no problem, but they wake up a lot throughout the night. Documenting how long were you asleep before you woke up? What woke you up? Are you having bad dreams? Are you having night sweats? Are you getting up to use the bathroom? Like, what is waking you up? Or do you not know? Like, write that down. What in the morning, write down how many hours did you sleep. A lot of us have, look, Apple Watches and Fitbits and things like that. Wear something like that to help you look at how many hours was I asleep. And sometimes, depending on what device you have, it'll kind of tell you where you were in REM sleep and good sleep, or where you were restless during then, right? So kind of looking at those things and like document it throughout, let's say, a week's time and see what the patterns look like. See if you can identify any patterns. You can even add, which this is a lot of work, but you can incorporate a food journal into your sleep journal as well, because we've talked about how food and things we ingest also impacts that. Start writing some of that down too. Like I know you can put down, I noticed when I have meals full of carbs, I may not sleep as well, or they wake me up in the middle of the night or something like that. Because what you're looking at is what is the pattern? What can you identify as a pattern? Because that way you can kind of go back and make changes, and you may say, oh, I think this might be it, but you took that out of the equation or you added something in there and that didn't work. Well, you go back to the drawing board and you try again. Another really good thing for the sleep journal is it's documentation for you to take to your medical professional. If you've tried everything over the counter, you've tried your sleep journal, you've set your mood, and you still can't get to sleep, then I would recommend seeing a doctor. But it's going to help you to walk into your doctor's office with your data already there instead of them saying, okay, write all this down and come back in 6 weeks. Like you're already one step ahead because you were doing it before you saw them the first time.
That's good. Um, so I just thought of something. Sometimes I recommend to clients progressive muscle relaxation. What are your thoughts about that? And can you give a little blurb about what that really is?
Yes. So, progressive muscle relaxation is a way to relax your body. The way I explain it to folks is you go through every part of your body by tensing and releasing it. So, say you start at your toes, you tighten up your toes and then you release your toes, and you go up throughout your whole body. You can start from head to toe or toe to head, that doesn't really matter. And what that's doing is that's relaxing your body, that's helping your body to be calm. And while you're doing that, there's oftentimes breath work that comes into that. And that's just another way also to relax yourself. And it, it sounds like, okay, that's ridiculous. That's not going to work. And I too was a naysayer. I actually believe Crystal used to be a naysayer, but it actually does work. What I think the problem that I see people encountering is they want it to work the first time or they want it to work right away. And like with anything, progressive muscle relaxation is something that you're learning if you haven't used it before and it's new. So practice when you may not absolutely have to have it. So when you need it, it works and it takes a little time for you to learn it and feel comfortable with it. So I tell people, even if you don't feel like you're having a hard time going to sleep, try to do some tension and relaxation in your muscles and practice it then. So when you are having a really hard time, you're like, oh, yeah, I've got this tool in my tool belt and I can refer to this. So,
Absolutely. And the same with just the deep breathing too.
yeah.
A lot of times people will I'll suggest it and they'll immediately say, that don't work for me. And
Uh-huh.
so now
Yeah.
I have questions and I'm like, okay, well, show me how you do it. And they're like,
Right.
I breathe. What do you mean? But it's a way to breathe and a wrong way to breathe when we are trying to inhibit relaxation or bring up relaxation for us so that we can relax and we can get to sleep. So that's important too, like not throwing it out because you try it one time and it doesn't seem to work. The reality is that might be true. It really may not work for you the first time, but
Yeah.
keep doing it. It's a practice.
Right.
Once you keep doing it, it will work for you, same as the progressive muscle relaxation. I want to go
Yeah.
back to the doctor piece. um so sometimes we can get in the habit of self-diagnosing.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I'll hear people throw out the term, um, I have insomnia. And could that be true? Maybe. But a lot of times it's not true, because there's criteria that come with that. And it's just not helpful to self diagnose. And so I want you to explain. There are other sleep disorders, but the two that, most people deal with is hypersomnia and insomnia. So can you just kind of bring some clarity to that so folks not going to their doctor saying, "Hey, I have this or I have that."
Sure. Yeah. So I think insomnia, like you said, is kind of the one that people refer to the most because that if you're not sleeping, you you have to have a reason for it. So you're like, I've got insomnia. I haven't slept in a couple weeks. I just can't sleep good. I'm waking up throughout the night, and that's not actually true if it's only been for a couple of weeks. So when I was talking about the journal and I was talking about patterns, that that's where insomnia diagnosis can kind of come into play. So insomnia is diagnosed if you have had sleep disruptions for a period of longer than 3 months.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then you can receive the diagnosis of insomnia from a medical professional. But if it's not, if you have like 2 or 3 weeks not sleeping well and then your sleep gets back on a schedule, then you don't have insomnia if it goes back and forth. So we're looking for a consistent, at least within a 3 months or longer. Um, and that's a little harder than I just haven't slept in a couple weeks, right? So, but that's where it it really comes in handy to have your documentation, because if you truly have not slept or you have sleep awakeness or difficulty falling asleep or anything like that, then you have that documentation to take. And if you're taking in 6 months worth of your journal, then they're going to be like, whoa, we might need to try other things that you haven't tried. They may recommend a sleep study so they can see what happens at night when you go to bed, or prescribe a medication that you need a prescription for. So there's other options. Hypersomnia is the opposite of insomnia. Hypersomnia is you could sleep anytime, any day.
Is that you?
And yeah, that's me. That's me. I, yeah, it's me. I sleep on my lunch break. I lay my head on my desk sometimes. I get in my car and sleep. I have hypersomnia, diagnosed for real. But
Yeah, this isn't
again,
a drill.
right, this isn't a drill. It's real. But so, and I really think something's wrong when I can't sleep, because I am like, wow, this is not Chrissy. But anyway, I digress. But hypersomnia is just like insomnia. It's a period of 3 months or longer of never feeling like you really have full rest. And again, that journal is something you can take in if you have hypersomnia as well. And they, again, a sleep study, which is the most thorough thing that I think is really going to help see what's going on. And a nap study. They actually can do a sleep study, which is more common, where you spend the night at a medical facility and they hook you up to with all the electrodes, and someone watches you sleep, and it shows like all the different brain waves and your body's reaction to sleep, whether you're actually asleep or you're awake throughout the night. Well, if you get a nap study, then you get to take naps throughout the day after you've had your sleep study, and they monitor how fast it takes you to fall asleep for a nap throughout the day, and how fast you enter into REM sleep for nap studies. So it's very fascinating to me.
Now, don't y'all go out there asking for a nap steady so you can take naps throughout the day. Um, I
I
wanted to
passed that
circle back.
with flying colors, by the way.
I
I
know
took
you
my
did.
naps just like a big girl.
I want to circle back. So we're given the distinction between hypersomnia and insomnia, and so 3 months or more, that's that criteria. It's not to undermine your experience if you can't sleep for 2 weeks. That is a problem. And
Yes.
so you should seek out your medical provider to see what, what your information and your sleep journal, you still need to do that information brings up. It could be something going on medically, it could be something going on related to your mental health, because most mental health problems, mental health diagnoses, sleep is in there. If your sleep
Mhm.
is disturbed for a lot of them, then that's an
Then
indication
that's
of
the
something.
indication.
So don't
So
overlook
don't.
that because you don't have
Right.
insomnia or hypersomnia. It still warrants you to reach out to someone. Chrissy, so we're talking about the connection between mental health, and sleep, our thoughts. I want to focus on that, our thoughts. Like, how do
Mhm.
they contribute to our sleep? How do they impact our sleep, negatively or positively?
So that's what I was talking about earlier, as far as the kind of the continuum. Like, we're for lack of better words, you're kind of like a dog chasing its tail. When you can't go to sleep, you're running in a circle. And if you have negative thoughts about the trying to fall asleep, because if you've not been asleep for a couple of weeks and you lay down at night and you're thinking, here we go again. I didn't sleep last night, didn't sleep the night before. I was moody at work. I can't get my work done because I'm not sleeping. Those are negative thoughts. And that is ramping up that body to almost it's almost telling your body, you're not going to sleep. You didn't do it last night. You didn't do it last week. You're not going to sleep. And you start worrying. It's creating that anxiety. And we feel that anxiety in all of our body and we can't relax. So what you should try to do is to have positive talk about your sleep habits, like saying things to yourself. Like I chuckle because I'm like, this is difficult and I haven't tried it and I don't know how successful I would be. However, I know how it is when you're having negative thoughts day to day and how our thoughts impact how we feel and our behaviors. So I know the expert in me knows that it will help at bed too, but it sounds very strange saying out loud. So saying to yourself, you know what? I've slept before. I'm going to sleep tonight. I may not get as much sleep as I want, but I'm going to get some sleep. I'm going to rest my body and just changing those thoughts to try to calm ourselves down instead of ramping ourselves up. And maybe even saying to ourselves, tonight I'm going to practice muscle relaxation and I'm going to go through and relax my body. And it's kind of like giving yourself that positive self talk to get out of the pattern of the negative self talk so you can have good rest. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's good. I mean, because we definitely know that there is power in our words, right? And so, you know, this can be a little awkward for the one who's never done and never tried. And I've been on both sides. Um,
Yeah.
when I think about those negative sleep thoughts, yeah, I'm guilty because there have been nights where I didn't sleep well, and I'm looking at the clock and like, okay, if I go to sleep now, I'll get X amount of hours of sleep, and then I look at the clock and it's been an hour and I'm still not asleep. I look at the clock, it's been another hour, I'm still not asleep. So now, yeah, I feel some type of way because I can't sleep, and I know in a few minutes I got to get up to go to work. So it does. I
Right.
know firsthand that puts you in a place. Um, but I've also been on the other side. I may not have, said, even if I don't sleep perfectly tonight, I can still function tomorrow, which is a positive sleep thought. May not be that. But what I have done is I've recited scripture. And I have some for those of you who would like to try that approach because the word works too. And so Psalms 4 and 8 is one of my go-tos. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone make me dwell in safety. That's my go-to. And there's some others. Proverbs 3 and 24. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. This is something that you can recite. You can put it on your phone and play it and listen to it. But whichever way you choose to do, just don't forget that our thoughts do control our experiences, right? Because when we think something, we feel something. When we feel something, we do something. So if I'm thinking something negative, I'm feeling something pretty negative too, right? So that's gonna, cause me to, flash all over the bed and roll and be upset and huff and puff, and I've worked myself up and I'm not sleeping, right? So
Right.
trying a different approach, trying that positive sleep thought can definitely be impactful for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
There's actually a recommendation that if you don't fall asleep within 15 to 30 minutes, that instead of creating more angst and more frustration, to get up and do something, like leave the bed because you're not doing what is made to happen in the bed. So you get up and read a book or don't do anything with electronics because the blue light actually
keeps you up.
really impacts your ability to fall asleep. So don't get up and watch your favorite TV show, the ID channel. Don't be doing that before you're trying to go to sleep or something. But like read a book, read your Bible,
Yeah.
something that's going to calm you and relax you, and then go back and try again.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Well, I think we
I
have
think
given the
we
people quite a bit tonight to sit with and to implement in their lives. Um, do you have anything else that you think you need to share with the people?
Not that I can think of, but we do have information we can provide to you. If you want more information, then we could get that to you. So just let us know.
Absolutely. So, by that, if you want what the negative and positive sleep log can look like for you, or if um, the journal, those things, just yeah, reach out and we can definitely get it to you. Gonna check the chat to see if we have any questions. Now is the time. If you have questions, to put them in there, and we will do our very best to answer them for you. I give you a minute or so. I hope you all enjoyed it and it was helpful. I'm not seeing any questions, so we're gonna move on over to the next part, which is our time to give. And so, Timmy, if you'll put up the cash app for Chrissy, if you found this information tonight helpful, you got some tips and tricks that you want to try, you say, yeah, that's me, and she gave me some good stuff, then consider sowing a seed. This is her cash app. We're also going to put up our ways to give for our ministry. If you want to sow into our apostle, this is how you do that. If you want to give your tithes and offering, now is the time to do that as well. And I'm going to end again with a quote by Ariana Huffington. So it says, lack of sleep impairs not only our health, but also our judgment and mental resilience. So with that, if you or someone you know is experiencing sleep disturbances, and that can look like sleeping too much, not sleeping enough, having a hard time going to sleep, but waking up, you can't stay asleep, and when you wake up you have a hard time going back to sleep. All of these are sleep disturbances, and if you're experiencing them, then I encourage you to reach out to your PCP, your primary care physician. Start there. As clinicians, that's where we start. We always want to first rule out a medical condition, and if after being cleared, then the next step, if it hasn't resolved, is to look into a mental health provider and to see how they can help you get your sleep back, get your sleep life back on track. Um, so we thank you. Um, as you all know, or some of you may not know, Patrice Horton, an elder and a former colleague, passed away this year, and she used to help me, or I used to help her facilitate this month every year for the community, for the church. And so we are continuing to do this in honor of her. And so that will be the last slide that you see for tonight. We thank you for joining us. We hope that it was educational, empowering, encouraging for you. Join us next week. It's the last week as we wrap up our Mental Health Awareness Month. Thank you.